Chapter 1. The Runaway Bride, Prince. The royal council chamber smelled of sandalwood and dusted silk, a place meant for dignity and tradition. Yet all dignity was shattered the moment Prince Kaelen Draven rose from his gilded chair and shouted, "I'd rather marry a goat than that monster." The gathered ministers gasped. One dropped his scroll. Another nearly fainted into the lap of his neighbor. King Draven pinched the bridge of his nose. "Kaelen, no, father." Kaelen jabbed a finger at the head of the table, where a crimson-sealed letter lay unopened, bearing the sigil of a raven and sword. "You think I don't know? You've sold me off like some prize mare to the Enigma warlord." The ministers began whispering the name in horror. Aurelian Vathar. Kaelen slammed his palms down, rattling the golden goblets. His voice dripped venom and sarcasm. "Yes, let's all bow and scrape to the man who bathes in blood and collects heads like others collect porcelain teacups. What a charming husband you've chosen for me. Really, father, why not send me straight to the butcher's block?" The king's jaw tightened. "This is not a choice, Kaelen. The alliance was orchestrated for— Oh, don't you dare say peace. It's always peace until someone loses a kingdom or a son." The queen looked like she'd wilt on the spot, but Kaelen stood tall, chin tilted defiantly. He was, after all, a supreme-class alpha, the strongest of his generation. If anyone was supposed to be feared, it was him. Yet his parents were trying to chain him to the one man whose name alone made entire armies tremble. Kaelen sneered, "I'm not some pawn to shove into the arms of a lunatic. If you think I'll stand at an altar with him, smiling like some docile bride, you're gravely mistaken." And with that, he stormed out of the council chamber, cape whipping dramatically behind him. That night, the palace was quiet. Too quiet. Servants searched frantically the next morning, only to find a stable boy's clothes discarded near the back gates, and the prince gone. Kaelen had traded his silks for rough linen, his crown for dirt on his cheeks. He carried a satchel stuffed mostly with bread rolls stolen from the kitchen, and one ridiculous jar of honey. He grinned smugly as he rode off into the countryside. "Ha!" he muttered to himself. "Let's see the terrifying Aurelian Vathar try to marry a ghost. The Alpha Prince of Draven bows to no one." For 2 whole weeks, Kaelen lived as a runaway. He slept in barns, teased villagers with made-up stories of being an adventurer, and congratulated himself nightly for escaping the clutches of the dreaded warlord. What he didn't know, what he never suspected, was that every step of his freedom had been permitted. Aurelian's web. Far away, in a fortress carved of black stone, Aurelian Vathar sat by a fire, reading reports with the serene air of a man enjoying his favorite romance novel. Each parchment carried the same story. The prince is now in the border village of Greymeadow, disguised as a stable boy. He has stolen bread again. Locals find him insufferable yet oddly charming. Aurelian's lips curved into something between a smile and a sigh. He traced Kaelen's name on the parchment with one gloved finger, whispering it like a prayer. "Run, little prince. Taste the air of freedom. Convince yourself you've escaped." He leaned back in his throne, dark eyes gleaming with an almost feverish devotion. "After all, I will be the one who captures you. No one else." It was Aurelian who had orchestrated the marriage in the first place, manipulating the Draven court with whispers of peace, trade, and alliance. He had played the royal council like musicians play harps, every note designed to lead to one outcome: Kaelen becoming his. He didn't want the kingdom. He didn't need the throne. He wanted only him. The capture. On the 15th night of Kaelen's freedom, a hand clamped down on his shoulder as he was attempting, and failing, to barter a loaf of bread for a horse. Kaelen whirled, ready to unleash his alpha strength, only to find himself staring at a ring of armored soldiers bearing the raven sigil of warlord. "Ah," Kaelen said flatly, dusting off his sleeves. "And here I thought I was clever." The soldiers didn't move. They parted silently, and through them strode Aurelian. He was taller than Kaelen remembered from childhood stories, broad-shouldered and regal in dark furs. His eyes, however, were not the eyes of a monster. They burned with an intensity so overwhelming Kaelen instinctively stepped back. Kaelen spat at the ground. "Touch me, and I'll scream." Aurelian's voice was calm, deep, and infuriatingly steady. "Scream louder. I like hearing your voice." Kaelen froze. His mouth opened, then closed. His brain, usually sharp with sarcasm, stuttered for a reply. Aurelian took another step closer, gaze drinking in every inch of him as if memorizing the lines of a beloved poem. His possessiveness was palpable, wrapping around Kaelen like invisible chains. "You can run for 2 weeks, 2 years, or 2 lifetimes," Aurelian murmured. "But in the end, you belong to me. You were always meant to be mine." Kaelen finally found his tongue, rolling his eyes as if the moment wasn't suffocating. "Oh, romantic. Next you'll tell me you wrote poetry about me." Aurelian's lips curved faintly. "Would you like to hear it?" "Gods, no." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to laugh or fear for their lives. Their terrifying warlord was standing there like a lovesick fool, while the captured prince looked ready to strangle him with sarcasm. And thus, Kaelen Draven was returned to captivity, not in chains of iron, but in chains of obsession far stronger than steel. Chapter 2. Chains of Gold. Kaelen had expected chains of iron. Shackles, perhaps, or a dank dungeon where the infamous Enigma warlord would lock him away until he begged for freedom. Instead, he found himself carried like a stubborn child in Aurelian Vathar's arms. "Put me down!" Kaelen snapped, thrashing against the hold. "No," Aurelian replied simply, adjusting him against his chest with infuriating gentleness. Kaelen hissed like a feral cat when the warlord bent his head and deliberately brushed his nose against the curve of Kaelen's neck, scenting him. "Stop that!" Aurelian chuckled, unbothered, his smile warm in a way no battlefield monster should wear. "You smell like you're angry. You're very adorable when you're angry." "Adorable!" Kaelen shrieked, cuffing at Aurelian's cheeks with his fists. The strikes barely landed, more frustrated slaps than actual blows. Aurelian only laughed again, letting his beloved alpha prince vent his fury, gazing at him with shameless adoration as though the tantrum was the most precious jewel he had ever owned. When they reached the grand palace gates, Kaelen's family was already there, summoned by Aurelian's letter. The king and queen of Draven watched silently as their son was paraded through the courtyard, kicking and snarling like an indignant kitten. Aurelian carried him proudly, utterly unfazed by the spectacle. Kaelen's mother sighed, muttering into her handkerchief. He looked so small in his arms. His father, the king, rubbed his temples. This is what happens when you raise a menace. Now he belongs to the Enigma king, and the entire court will gossip for decades. Kaelen shouted back at them as he was hauled inside. "Traitors, both of you!" The wedding happened shockingly quickly. Kaelen still didn't know how Aurelian had convinced him. Some mix of relentless patience, sly manipulation, and perhaps a moment of weakness when Kaelen thought, "Fine, let's see how long before he regrets marrying me." But there he stood, draped in gold-embroidered silks, glaring at the officiant as Aurelian gazed at him like he was the dawn. When the vows were spoken, Kaelen sneered through his teeth. "I hope you choke on your wedding wine." Aurelian only pressed a soft kiss to his hand and whispered, "As long as you'll be the one cursing me, I'll die happily." The Draven family in the front row could only sigh again. Chains of silk. The fortress Kaelen was brought to was no prison. It was a palace of obsidian and marble, draped with velvet curtains and dripping with gold. Kaelen had never seen such luxury, but he refused to admit he liked it. When Aurelian dressed him in silk robes and fed him grapes from golden trays, Kaelen crossed his arms and declared, "I'm a prisoner." Aurelian leaned closer, his voice low and warm. "You're my husband." Kaelen hissed at him again like a cat, only to snatch a grape the moment Aurelian looked away. The warlord's men whispered to each other in the halls. "Their terrifying king is whipped. He brings his spouse gifts every sunrise. The prince throws them at his head, but then eats them later in secret." The mark. Despite his vow never to force Kaelen, Aurelian could not allow him to escape again. One night, as Kaelen dramatically threw pillows at him for snoring too loudly, Aurelian gathered him into his arms and pressed his lips against the curve of Kaelen's neck and bite his neck-making mark. The Enigma mark flared, golden, binding, permanent. Kaelen froze, then exploded. You, I'll never forgive you for this. Aurelian hushed him softly, pulling him tighter against his chest. I won't touch you without your consent. But you're mine, Kaelen. You'll never run from me again. Kaelen swore at him in 3 different languages until his voice gave out. Eventually, exhaustion won, and Kaelen dozed off, still cursing under his breath, arms curled around Aurelian despite himself. When dawn came, Aurelian's eyes opened first. He didn't move, didn't breathe too loudly, just stared at the sleeping alpha prince in his arms, his gaze full of reverence. His fingers brushed gently through Kaelen's hair as though afraid the dream would break. My beautiful husband, he whispered, even your hatred is a gift. Banter's luxury. Kaelen woke hours later, face buried against Aurelian's chest. He shoved away immediately, glaring as he grabbed the jeweled fruit platter from the bedside. You're a tyrant, a monster. I'll never forgive you. He bit into a slice of exotic starfruit, chewed noisily, and glared harder. Aurelian chuckled. You look very handsome when you eat angrily. Shut up before I choke myself just to spite you. The servants outside tried not to laugh. Their mighty king, the one who once struck terror across nations, now spent his days being insulted by a sarcastic prince, yet he looked happier than anyone had ever seen him. For every curse, Aurelian offered a gift. For every hiss, he gave a smile. For every stubborn glare, he responded with devotion so smothering it was almost absurd. Kaelen, of course, pretended to hate it. Pretended to hate the silks, the jewels, the endless pampering. But deep down, in the quiet of the night, when Aurelian's arms wrapped around him and the warlord's steady heartbeat lulled him to sleep, he didn't fight as hard as he used to. Chapter 3. The Menace versus the Fool. 4 months into their marriage, the palace of the Enigma kingdom had changed in ways the courtiers could hardly comprehend. Where once the fortress was a place of fear, dark halls echoing with silence, soldiers stiff as statues, now laughter and shouting, usually from the royal chambers, rang through the corridors daily. The cause of all this, Prince Kaelen Draven, now officially husband to the feared warlord king, royal court chaos. Kaelen sat lazily in the throne beside Aurelian's, legs crossed, arms folded, a permanent scowl on his beautiful face. He had refused to wear a crown, choosing instead a smug expression that screamed, "Or, I'd rather die than take this seriously." Yet, when petitions were brought forth, merchants squabbling, generals proposing strategies, nobles whining, Kaelen always cut through the noise in a matter of minutes. This trade deal is nonsense, he declared once, flicking through parchment like it was garbage. If you lower taxes for the river merchants, the mountain traders will riot. Do both at once, but stagger the timeline so they're too busy counting coins to complain. Next. Phew. The ministers gawked. Aurelian, meanwhile, leaned back on his throne and gazed at Kaelen with all the love of a man watching the sun rise. My husband is brilliant, he murmured aloud. Kaelen turned his head slowly and muttered just loud enough for him to hear. Shut up before I divorce you in public. The court fell into stunned silence. Aurelian only smiled, looking besotted. Escape attempt. #1. The window. Later that week, Kaelen decided it was time to test palace security. In the dead of night, he climbed onto the balcony railing, glaring at the moon as though it was his accomplice. They think they can cage me? I'm the Alpha Prince. A gust of wind threw him off balance, and with an undignified yelp, he fell, only to land in a golden net stretched below the balcony. From the shadows, Aurelian stepped forward, utterly unbothered in his night robes. Good evening, husband. Kaelen writhed in the net, spitting like a trapped cat. Damn you, Aurelian. Such passion, Aurelian said dreamily. Do it again. Escape attempt. #2. Poisoned wine. The next attempt was bolder. At dinner, Kaelen handed Aurelian a goblet of wine, smiling so sweetly it made the servants nervous. My love, he purred, a toast to freedom. Aurelian accepted the goblet without hesitation and drank deeply, eyes never leaving Kaelen's. Kaelen waited and waited. Finally, he snapped, "Well, aren't you going to keel over?" Aurelian set down the cup, smirking. "If you kill me, Kaelen, I'll still haunt you. You'll never be rid of me." Kaelen threw his napkin in his face. The soldiers in the hall whispered to each other later, "Did you see that?" The king was glowing. He enjoyed being poisoned. Escape attempt. #3. The servant's tray. Another day, Kaelen decided to test stealth. He crouched under a massive silver tray, crawling slowly toward the kitchen exit. His legs poked out, but he hissed at the servants not to say a word. Aurelian, of course, intercepted him in the corridor. "Do you think I can't smell you?" he asked casually, plucking the tray off his head. Kaelen squinted at him. "Maybe you should see a healer, because clearly you're obsessed." "Yes," Aurelian said warmly, "obsessed with you." Kaelen threw the tray at him and stormed off. Whispers in the palace. The soldiers, servants, and advisors had grown used to the spectacle. "Our king is terrifying, but to his husband, he's whipped." "Did you see how His Majesty nearly begged for Kaelen to curse him again? If the prince glared at me like that, I'd faint. But the king looks like he's in heaven." They adored Kaelen's antics, secretly cheering him on every time he made Aurelian chase him around the palace like a lovesick fool. Softening. For all his sarcasm, Kaelen couldn't ignore one thing. Aurelian never forced him. Whenever Kaelen pushed too far, when his anger edged close to genuine fear, Aurelian always stepped back, always reassured him, always held him like glass. And when whispers of threats reached the palace, assassins from rival kingdoms, enemies seeking revenge, Aurelian shielded Kaelen without hesitation, taking blade and arrow for him without complaint. Kaelen had mocked him endlessly after one such attempt. "You idiot! What kind of king throws himself in front of knives for someone who poisons his wine?" Aurelian, bleeding but smiling, replied, "A husband who adores you." Kaelen's voice faltered. His glare softened for half a second before he barked, "Don't say sappy things while you're bleeding on my floors, you lovesick fool." Still, that night, when Aurelian fell asleep, Kaelen stayed awake longer than usual, watching him quietly, almost protectively. Perhaps, he thought begrudgingly, being chained in gold wasn't the worst fate after all. Chapter 4. The Prince's Undoing. It had been raining for 3 days without pause, the kind of storm that made the castle walls shiver. Kaelen sat by the window, chin propped in hand, pretending he wasn't watching Aurelian pace the courtyard like a restless wolf. When the thunder cracked loud enough to rattle the sky, Aurelian suddenly dropped to his knees in the mud, golden crown tilted by the rain, and whispered as if the storm itself could hear, "Even if you hate me forever, I'll still keep you safe." Kaelen's sarcastic heart, well, his allegedly sarcastic-only heart, stuttered. His brain immediately panicked. No, 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 absolutely not. I am not going soft. He's ridiculous. He's dramatic. He's soaked. When Aurelian returned inside dripping wet, Kaelen crossed his arms, refusing to look impressed. "Do you kneel to every thundercloud? Or am I just special?" Kaelen muttered. Aurelian's lips curved into that hopelessly foolish smile. "You're the only storm I'll ever kneel to." Kaelen threw a cushion at his head. That night, the storm raged harder, and the palace trembled. Kaelen, wrapped in 3 blankets, glared at Aurelian hovering in the doorway like a lovesick ghost. "Why are you staring at me like that?" Kaelen demanded. Aurelian's voice was soft. "To make sure you're safe." Kaelen groaned and rolled his eyes. "Fine, you can stay, but only to keep me warm. Don't touch me." It was supposed to be a command. Instead, it came out more like a whisper. Aurelian obeyed, lying stiffly at the edge of the bed, his huge frame radiating heat. But when Kaelen shifted closer, muttering something about drafts and terrible insulation, Aurelian nearly stopped breathing. What began with Kaelen grumbling about cold feet ended with his hand tugging Aurelian closer, lips brushing with an impatience that startled them both. Consent wasn't begged for. It was given freely, almost arrogantly, by Kaelen himself. And when it happened, when Kaelen finally let Aurelian claim him, Aurelian clutched him like a miracle, whispering Kaelen's name as if it was the only language he'd ever speak. By morning, Aurelian was so deliriously happy he declared a week-long kingdom-wide celebration. Fireworks, feasts, music in the streets, everywhere, people toasted to their king's joy. When Kaelen's family arrived, they nearly fainted at the sight of their once stubborn prince lounging in Aurelian's lap, stealing bites from the dessert tray while Aurelian let him. His mother gasped. "Kaelen, you let him?" Kaelen rolled his eyes. "Don't say it like I've been defeated in battle. I simply allowed him the honor of warming my bed." Aurelian, eyes glowing with pride, kissed Kaelen's temple. "He didn't just allow me. He initiated." Kaelen smacked his chest, cheeks burning. "Shut up before I poison your wine again." But the royal family couldn't ignore what their eyes saw. The terrifying Enigma king pampering their son, laughing at every sarcastic jab, handing him the choicest fruits, even ordering a royal decree that Kaelen alone decides the dessert tray's contents. Later, when Kaelen's father muttered in disbelief, "Our stubborn boy actually softened," Kaelen snapped. "Softened? I'm still sharp enough to stab him with a fork if he annoys me. Pass the cake." And Aurelian, ever the fool, grinned as if Kaelen had just declared eternal love. "I'll give you the world, Kaelen." Kaelen smirked. "Start by giving me control of the dessert tray." The court roared with laughter. The kingdom rejoiced. And Aurelian, still madly, hopelessly obsessed, looked at his menace of a husband as though he'd already been given more than the world. Chapter 5. Chaos, Comedy, and Heirs. 2 months after the great celebration, the palace echoed with a scream that could have shaken the heavens. Kaelen burst out of the royal physician's chamber, hair tousled, eyes blazing, and pointed a trembling finger at his husband. "You did this to me. You made me pregnant, you jerk!" The entire court froze. Servants dropped trays. Guards pretended to become statues. Aurelian, meanwhile, looked like a child caught with his hand in the honey jar. "You begged me to stay that night," Aurelian muttered sheepishly, scratching the back of his neck. Kaelen hurled the nearest pillow at his head. "Don't twist my words, you warlord menace. I said stay, not spawn." From that day on, palace life turned into pure chaos. Kaelen's sarcasm reached divine levels. Every morning, pillows flew at Aurelian's face like ceremonial greetings. Every night, Kaelen accused him of plotting against his waistline. Meanwhile, Aurelian was deliriously happy. He doubled the guards, tripled the physicians, and built not 1 but 3 nurseries, each bigger than Kaelen's old chambers in his father's palace. One had golden cribs, another was painted with stars, and the last was so filled with toys it looked like a festival ground. "Are you raising a child or an army?" Kaelen demanded. "My heir deserves an empire," Aurelian replied, carrying him bridal style. Even when Kaelen swore he could walk. The palace servants adored their prince's antics even more. Rumors spread like wildfire. Their terrifying Enigma king turned into putty the moment Kaelen rolled his eyes. And Kaelen, though he never admitted it, was secretly happy. When he saw Aurelian guarding his rest like a dragon over treasure, or when he felt strong arms wrap around him during his worst nausea spells, his heart betrayed him with a soft warmth. When Kaelen's family arrived after hearing the news, they found him lounging on a mountain of silk pillows, Aurelian spoon-feeding him fruits. His mother covered her mouth. "Kaelen, you're glowing." "Glowing? I'm suffering," Kaelen snapped, smacking Aurelian's hand away. "And this brute is enjoying it." Aurelian kissed his temple in front of everyone. "Enjoying you? Yes." Kaelen's father nearly fainted. The months rolled by in chaos and comedy until, one fateful night, Kaelen's cries filled the birthing chamber. Aurelian's heart nearly shattered hearing him scream. Hours dragged like centuries until finally, the first wail of a newborn boy rang out. The physician presented the child, tiny and pink with wisps of dark curls. "A healthy son, my king and prince." His strength is remarkable. Aurelian's eyes filled with tears. He cradled his son carefully, whispering, Lysander. But then Kaelen went limp. His body sagged, and his eyes fluttered closed. Kaelen! Kaelen! Aurelian's soul split apart in that moment. He thrust the newborn into the arms of Kaelen's parents, his voice breaking. Take care of him, just for now. I need to stay. He refused to leave Kaelen's side. He held his hand, pressed his lips to his knuckles, and whispered desperate prayers he had never believed in before. When Kaelen finally stirred, groggy but alive, the royal physician smiled reassuringly. He's not in danger. He only fainted from exhaustion. Aurelian buried his face in Kaelen's hair, shoulders trembling with relief. Don't you ever scare me like that again. Kaelen cracked one eye open, voice hoarse but laced with sarcasm. You think I fainted on purpose? Aurelian laughed through his tears, pressing kisses all over his husband's face until Kaelen shoved him weakly. Days later, with baby Lysander sleeping peacefully between them, Kaelen leaned against Aurelian's chest. You get too smug about this, I swear I'll run away again, he muttered. Aurelian wrapped him tighter, chin resting on his head. Run as far as you want, my love. I'll always catch you. Kaelen sighed, pretending to be annoyed even as he cuddled closer. Idiot. Their child's soft breathing filled the room, and for the first time chaos felt like home. The menace and the fool had built a family, loud, luxurious, and full of love. Epilogue, Double Trouble. 5 years later, the fortress echoed with chaos louder than any battlefield. Kaelen sat on a silk-draped couch, eating grapes smugly while watching the scene unfold before him. On the other side of the hall, Aurelian, the feared Enigma warlord, conqueror of nations, king of kings, was currently being chased by a 5-year-old with a wooden sword. Papa, stand still! I'm defeating the dragon! Lysander squealed, his dark curls bouncing as he swung his toy blade with frightening determination. Aurelian, sweating, dodged with the reflexes of a seasoned warrior. Beloved, tell your son I am not the dragon. Kaelen popped another grape into his mouth. Correction, he's my son, and you absolutely are the dragon. Lysander smacked Aurelian's shin. Victory! The dragon falls! The great warlord collapsed dramatically to the ground, clutching his chest as if mortally wounded. Oh no! The mighty warrior Lysander has slain me! I perish! Lysander jumped on him, triumphant. I win again, Papa! Kaelen snorted. Of course you did. He lets you win every time. Don't let it get to your head. Aurelian sat up, holding Lysander in his lap, his smile so blinding it could melt steel. He's brilliant, just like you. Brilliant. He's already a menace, Kaelen shot back. One of me is enough, the kingdom won't survive too. Lysander blinked innocently. Daddy, does that mean I should throw pillows at Papa too? Kaelen's grin turned wicked. Absolutely. Aurelian groaned as his son launched a pillow at his head. The servants whispered from the corners, trying not to laugh. Their terrifying king had been defeated, not by swords, not by armies, but by his sarcastic husband and their mischievous heir. Later that night, Kaelen curled against Aurelian's side, Lysander snoring between them. You know, Kaelen muttered softly, for someone who tricked me into marriage, branded me like a prized stallion, and made my life unbearable, you turned out to be a decent husband. Aurelian kissed his hair, his voice full of adoration. And you turned out to be my whole world. Kaelen rolled his eyes, but his smile betrayed him as he whispered back, Idiot. The menace and the fool, now doubled by their tiny heir, had built not just a kingdom, but a home filled with laughter, chaos, and love that would last generations.